My name is Delia Goodwin and I'm one of the consultants here at the University of Manchester with a specialism in disability. I'm joined by my colleague Jenny Sloan, who is a graduate transitions careers consultant, and also by Kiana from Even Break. Kiana and I have worked together before on these webinars, and I'm delighted that she's able to come today to speak to us. Shortly, we should be having another panellist as well, Emma Woodward from DAS. Kiana will be speaking first, so I've changed the order slightly, which means that the context, as it were, for this, and then ensuring that you are all aware of all the things that you need to know around the Equality Act and disclosing disability and also asking for adjustment. And then hopefully that will be followed by our colleague from DAS. Then Jenny will be providing an overview of ongoing support as a graduate, and then that will be followed by Q&A. But okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kiana, who will be talking to you about inclusivity at work.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for having me today at this webinar. So I'm Kiana. I am Candidate Engagement Manager at Even Break, and today I want to talk to you about inclusion at work. How do you find inclusive employers? What are some examples of adjustments at the workplace? And what are some real stories from others who've been through this process? I'd like to start off with Sam's video. I'll let you watch some of this. And Sam is a BBC production assistant.
I'm a production management assistant on The Social, which is the development platform from BBC Scotland, and I've been working with the team for about 18 months, and my name is Sam Whittle. My role in all of that as a production management assistant is I facilitate the team who work with the contributors. So everything from raising contracts, making sure they all get paid. One of the biggest misconceptions about disabled people working is that in order for someone to be in the workplace, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of adjustment. I know myself, I certainly got to the stage where if I'm ever entering a new role or a new workplace, the first thing I do is tell them what I need and tell them how to do it. And it kind of alleviates any worries about how hard it's going to be. So I have two elements to my disability. One's really visible, which is highlighted by my guide dog Ziggy, and that's my visual impairment. But I'm also hearing impaired as well. It's quite difficult because whilst you want people to see that you're coping and resilient and that you can get on with your job, I think there also needs to be more awareness and just people to remember, oh, actually, Sam, is there anything else you need today? Because sometimes you forget. That's the great thing about certainly my workplace, is that so many things have been put in place that sometimes I forget.
So that's Sam's video and her story of how the workplace has made adjustments to make sure that Sam can sort of do her best at work and really succeed. But every workplace is different, every job is different. So I want to give you examples of others and how they've approached accessibility in the workplace and how they've spoken to their employers. So this is Ross, and he works at Lloyd's Banking Group as an accessibility manager. And here's how he approached disclosing his disability to his employer. So he started from the application process. He disclosed on the application form, and he did this because he felt it was the honest thing to do, but also he needed adjustment both in the job role and at the interview. He said that he didn't feel particularly nervous about disclosing because the employer had a two-tick symbol, so that's like a disability confidence symbol, and because he did disclose, he managed to get reasonable adjustments for the interview process. There was a dedicated team there to speak to him, and everything went really well at the interview and he got the job. So Ross's advice would be that you don't want to work for a company that isn't inclusive anyway. So if you need adjustments, just tell the employer, and if they react badly, then that is their loss. Next, I want to tell you about Titi. Titi is working with us at the moment at Even Break, but before that, she's worked in many different roles as a pastoral assistant at a boarding school, an education learning designer, and online English tutor. And she had advice on how to disclose for all of these different types of roles. So Titi didn't disclose her disability in all the roles, only for 2 out of the 3 roles. One of these jobs involved working with children, and she wanted to be open about any challenges and needs of the job. She had a really great experience in that role where she did have to work with children. Her workplace did an assessment, and they made some adjustments, and everything went very smoothly. One of the main reasons that Titi decided to disclose was because she had had a really great experience from university, and that impacted on her decision to tell her employer in the workplace. And she managed to get all the support that she needed, and also applied for access to work. And Titi's approach would be to sort of look at it on a case by case. There's no hard and fast rule. And if you feel that disclosing your disability is relevant and it can help you, then by all means do so. But if you feel that it doesn't affect the role and you don't need any adjustments, then it's entirely up to you. And finally, I'd like to tell you about Cass. So Cass works at Amy Consulting as a signals design assistant engineer, and this is her approach to workplace adjustments. So Cass decided to disclose straight away because it was difficult for her to disguise her disability anyway, and she felt that she wanted to sort of take control over the narrative and take control of the conversation and the tone, and she wanted to put her employer at ease. Cass mentioned that there might always be some anxiety of disclosing, but if you kind of put your foot forward and talk about it first, it can really help. And her employer did everything possible to help. Cass decided not to put her disability on her CV because it didn't feel advantageous or particularly relevant. So at the end of the day, just do what you feel is right and what will help you to succeed in the role that you're applying to. Another way to think about disclosing and speaking to employers is that you don't need to actually explain what your health condition or disability or impairment is. You can disclose what adjustments you need instead. So, for example, I have spinal muscular atrophy type 2, but I don't need to actually tell my employer what my health condition is or that I have a neuromuscular condition. What I usually say is that I need wheelchair access, I need an accessible bathroom, and I may need some adjustments to my workstation or hours of work. So if you don't need any adjustments, or you think you can make those adjustments at a later stage, then there's perhaps less urgency for your employer to know. At the end of the day, whatever you decide, it's entirely up to you. But if you do need to apply for access to work, then it is easier to have that conversation early on to make sure anything that you need is put in place. And remember that when you are disclosing, don't just say, I have a disability and this is, this could, mean that I need to have something adjusted. Also talk about the skills that you bring to the workplace, because whilst disclosing is a difficult decision, you can approach it from the sense that you're actually bringing additional skills. So your workplace could benefit from a wider talent pool, increased productivity, reduced absenteeism, fewer health and safety accidents at work, access to the purple pounds, which is an estimated £249 billion spending power that disabled people and their families have in the UK. And your workplace will also have a more creative and innovative team. So all of these points are backed up by statistics and evidence. And if you'd like to read more on that, you can buy Jane's book called A Dozen Brilliant Reasons to Employ Disabled People. It's on Amazon and it's a really fantastic read, very easy, and I really enjoyed reading it. So just to finish, if you'd like to find inclusive employers or if you need any help, you can contact Even Break. We are the only AAA accessible job board in the UK, bringing together disabled talent and inclusive employers. And we have thousands of vacancies that are updated regularly. I've listed some past opportunities here. So we've had jobs with the Department of Health and Social Work, SHL, SCS Railways, Financial Times, and Carnival UK. So really we work with a big range of corporations and smaller businesses. We've also recently launched a new platform called Careers Hive, and this is your go-to for coaching and advice to help you move forward in your career. We also have resources on there that can help you. We have videos on how to apply for access to work or how to be your own boss if you're interested in self-employment. And we work in partnership with other organisations who can offer one-to-one and complementary support. So thank you so much. I've rushed through this presentation a little bit, so if you have any questions, please do email me. My email address is kiana@evenbreak.co.uk. You can sign up to get fortnightly newsletters and vacancy highlights. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kiana, for that. We really do appreciate your time today. Just very grateful for your input today, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so thanks to Kiana for that. Right, so I'm just going to go into some explanation now. So it's really important that you are aware of your rights under the Equality Act 2010. So I will just go through some examples shortly of what that, what this might actually mean in practice. But essentially, the Equality Act defines disability as a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term diverse effect on a person's ability to carry out day-to-day activities. If you are registered as disabled with DAS, you may well already have a support plan, or you may not be necessarily registered with DAS, but equally it's really important that you are aware of your rights, as I said. So examples of conditions that are listed under the Equality Act are very wide ranging, as I'm sure you're aware. So it could be something from specific learning difficulties such as dyslexia, right through to mental illness, anxiety, depression, and also long-term health conditions such as Crohn's disease or chronic fatigue syndrome, the autism spectrum, and also neurological conditions such as, for example, multiple sclerosis. The definition is that the condition has to be more than minor or trivial. For example, it takes longer than it would normally to complete a daily task, and also that the condition has been present with you for 12 months or more. So there are special rules for fluctuating or recurring conditions as well. But essentially, what you need to know is that when a person meets this definition, employers are required to make reasonable adjustments to any elements of the job which place you as a disabled person at a disadvantage compared to a non-disabled person. So it's all about levelling the playing field and making opportunities equal access for all. So this can arise during the recruitment process, from advertising actually right through to the selection. So not just the actual mechanics of the recruitment process, but right from the advert through the selection recruitment process, and also once the employee starts work. Okay, so section 20 of the Equality Act basically that this is the bit that is really important to know, that if the physical features of the work premises or the working arrangements are the prohibiting factor to a disabled person gaining or staying in employment, then the employer must make reasonable adjustments to remove these barriers. So yes, so reasonable adjustments can occur in recruitment and the workplace, and as I said before, it's about you having a right to a level playing field at any stage within the process. So the point of it is to prevent disadvantage. Those adjustments can only be made, though, from the point of disclosure. So that's why considering when to do this is so important. You are not obliged, as Kiana mentioned, to disclose your condition, and actually the employer can't ask you about your condition. It's about deciding what adjustments you might need in the process. And I would say that the earlier the better, to prevent you from being unfairly disadvantaged in that recruitment process. So what is reasonable? So examples here, the first bullet point relates to the recruitment process, and the others are all related really to the workplace, which my colleague Emma Woodward from DAS will be covering in some detail after this. But examples of recruitment adjustments could be, for example, extra time for completing assessment. So if you have a DAS support plan and you already have extra time, for example 25%, then that is something that is very legitimate for you to request. You could need modifications for the actual materials, for example, larger print. And in some cases, particularly for perhaps individuals who have anxiety or are on the autism spectrum, for example, who have maybe difficulties with processing the questions, then sometimes questions can be given in advance, so half an hour before, for example, to allay that anxiety and to make the experience less daunting. Certainly in the workplace, we have things like flexible hours or specialist software, modified equipment. It could be that you need specialist training or a quiet workspace. Obviously, at the moment, everybody's mainly working from home, so that's actually working to people's advantage in some ways when you're applying for roles at the moment in the current situation. That can actually be a positive. Making instructions and manuals more accessible, providing a reader or interpreter or time off for medical appointments. Now, it's important to note that this isn't a menu. So these are just examples. Your adjustments are unique and personal to you. If you already have a DAF support plan, then that can be a good starting point guide, but it might not necessarily translate exactly into the workplace. So it's all about having conversations with the recruiters about this, which I will come to shortly. So the reasonable adjustment on an employer is not anticipatory. So essentially, it's only from the point at which you make that disclosure that you can access those adjustments. And it's also important to note that if an employer does not make reasonable adjustments, then that actually counts as discrimination. So how and when to request adjustments. So you'll notice I haven't said how and when to disclose there, and that's because, as I said before, it's important to remember that you do not have to disclose your condition or the nature of your condition. That is within your gift. If you believe that is helpful to be able to do that, then fine. But it is a highly personal decision. It can take time to work through and come to a decision about. And there are pros and cons, of course. You might not want to be defined by your disability or health condition, or you might not see it as a disability even. You might think it doesn't affect your ability to do the job, so why draw attention to it? Also, you might have heard negative stories about attitude to applicants disclosing, but it's worth bearing in mind that you are entitled to this support under the law. And also many employers, such as the ones that Kiana was referencing, are very committed to recruiting disabled applicants as they're seeking a diverse workforce. And you also might be able to take the opportunity to describe your disability in a positive light. So, for example, providing examples of competencies employers seek, such as problem solving or overcoming obstacles potentially. Yeah, so when and how. So yeah, at the application stage, when invited to interview, is it at interview? I wouldn't recommend that you disclose that actually in an interview. I would always say be as open as you can before the event within the process. So there are no right and wrong answers. Everybody is an individual and has their own individual needs and thoughts and views and experiences. So we are very well aware of that, and that's why we offer the 60-minute appointments here at the Career Service. So if you wanted to book in with either myself and my colleague Vic Geary, then obviously that is absolutely fine to do so. So what next? So you know your rights now, but what do you do next? So I would suggest really to be as upfront as you can, but keep to the facts. This isn't a heart-to-heart with a recruiter. It's just a frank conversation about your needs. So ask about the process, research the employer, use the resources and the advice available, and be confident, positive and unapologetic. You have nothing to apologise for. You are simply stating the fact that you have some particular needs that would need addressing in the recruitment process or in the workplace. As I said before, it's also your opportunity to do some positive self-marketing and focus on what you can do instead of what you have difficulty with. So focusing on your skills, your abilities, your personal qualities. Very often the competencies that you may be asked to talk about within a recruitment process may well play to some of the obstacles that you've perhaps had to overcome as a disabled individual. Preparing how to respond to questions about your disability or health issues. So having an openness statement is something a lot of recruiters are seeing now. So having a very concise, clear openness statement within the application process, whether that's via email or via the actual online application process, if there is room for that. If there isn't room for that in the application process, then I always recommend that you contact the HR departments directly. If you can't necessarily see a gap somewhere within the process, they are, human resources are humans, at the end of the line, so they will always take the opportunity to respond to any queries. But if you have any issues with how to craft those kinds of openness statements, what you would need to say, then again, we're available for an advice at the Careers Service. Demonstrate your disability that hasn't limited your personal achievements, study or work experience, and then verbalise what adjustments, if any, you might need to carry out the work. Okay, so these are some examples of possible questions that you might have, examples of the kinds of questions that we deal with at the Careers Service. So please be aware that obviously we will attempt to support you with any of these. And there are also organisations like Even Break and an organisation called Employability who offer free support and advice to candidates. They also offer internships and graduate roles as well. So their details are on here. So that's employability, advice and support, plus internships and graduate positions. There are also organisations such as My Plus Consulting, NAS, the mental health information through Mind, hiring solicitors, and there's also here on this page some further resources for you. Okay, so I will draw it to a close now, and I'm now going to introduce to you my colleague at DAS, Emma Woodward, who is going to be talking to you about support in the workplace and particularly the ins and outs of access to work. I do know that many students I speak to haven't heard of access to work, don't really know, what it is, don't know that actually that help and support is freely available to you. So Emma will give you more details of that. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Delia. I work quite closely supporting staff at the university with access to work applications. It's something that we really encourage staff to go through the access to work process. And it is called the government's best kept secret, because it's not so widely known about. But there are many organisations who are aware of it and many more organisations who are becoming aware of it. And I think actually even for smaller employers who aren't aware of it, that a new recruit coming to them in the first couple of weeks or whenever they choose to disclose and say, actually, there's a government scheme called Access to Work who will provide me with some support for the things that I could benefit from in work. A lot of employers who aren't aware of that will be very positive to hear that there is that resource there for yourself and also for them, especially if they are a large employer, because if you apply within the first 6 weeks of a new job, Access to Work will fund 100% of the equipment that you may need in your role. So if you required a height adjustable desk and an ergonomic chair, and maybe smaller ergonomic items, keyboard and mice, those would be things that Access to Work would fully fund in the first 6 weeks of employment. So Access to Work have an assessment process. They have quite a simple online form that you fill out, and then they arrange a workplace assessment, which used to happen face-to-face, are now happening remotely, and it doesn't seem to have impacted on the quality of the assessments in any way. So yes, so the assessments are still happening, and they are still providing support for people who aren't working in their workplaces, as they always have supported people who work at home as well. So actually, whilst things may be a confused picture in some ways with working environments in the future and hybrid working, Access to Work will provide support for wherever you're based. So if you've got a couple of locations, they will look at what support that you need in the various locations that you're working in. So yes, they do an assessment. They write up a report. The report gets shared with yourself only, and then it's your choice about who sees that report. If you share the full report with your employer, I do request to see the full report because it has more information than the employer receives. So it is helpful for ordering equipment and helping facilitate the support that Access to Work have recommended. So as well as equipment, Access to Work also fund personal support, and that's actually not dependent on the size of the employer or whether you apply within the first 6 weeks. They will always fund the cost of support workers. So if your colleagues and line managers would benefit from awareness training on your condition, Access to Work will fund that. If you require training on assistive software, voice dictation software or text-to-speech software, they will also provide funding for training on that. And one of the other kind of personal support that can be funded by Access to Work is sometimes referred to by them as coping strategy support. Sometimes it's referred to as job coaching. And it's basically an hour every couple of weeks, usually, where you sit down with a support worker who is experienced in supporting people develop strategies for overcoming the difficulties they experience with fatigue or neurodiversity, which especially when you're learning a new job, sometimes you're getting information in a way that's not always the most accessible. And sometimes having that a support worker to help you reword, translate, help the understanding of the language and the new terminology in roles. So that support can be really beneficial. And they also have a mental health service which can provide coping strategy support and a support plan, and quite a few members of staff at the university have accessed support from them and found that very useful. And if you're in a situation where you actually are maybe not sure what support you would benefit from because you're not sure what support's out there, Access to Work is a really good way to have a chat with somebody who knows what support's out there. So by talking with somebody and talking about the difficulties they experience, the assessor will be able to identify and suggest support recommendations to you. So don't worry if you apply and you don't know and you don't have anything specific in your mind that you're asking for. Through that discussion and they call it an assessment, but it's not a test or anything like that. It is a discussion with somebody to assess the support that you would benefit from. So yes, so access to work, really important, really beneficial, and we thoroughly encourage staff at the university to access it, and I would thoroughly encourage our graduates to access it and look into it as well. And I think then maybe just to touch on briefly, because this has come up a bit, support for interviews. Access to work can provide support for interviews. It tends to be communication support or BSL interpretation for interviews. They don't seem to have, that I'm aware of, too many other kind of support things for interviews. But if you have something in your mind that you think you need for an interview, by all means contact them and have a conversation with them and see if that is something that they can provide. But often the things that you may need for or would benefit from an interview, reasonable adjustment, is going to be provided by the employer rather than access to work. So we do have access to assistive software site licenses. So sometimes if somebody wants to be able to use a proofreading software to check a piece of text that they have to construct as part of the interview, then they could use the assistive software to check that, and we can make that adjustment. And sometimes the adjustments for interviews can be quite small but effective, so don't worry about asking for them, because generally they can often be provided and it's absolutely no bother. So if somebody gets an interview, for 9 o'clock in the morning or 9:30, and mornings are difficult for them, I would always encourage people to reply straight away and say, actually, would it be possible to have the interview after 12 o'clock or whatever your preferred time is? Because it's maybe just that they put you in first of all in the series of interviews that they've got that day, and that they would be able to very simply move you to the last one of the day rather than the first one. So I would always encourage people, if they think that those things would make a difference for them, to request those at the interview process. And yes, it's quite common if you do have a set test in an interview, that you can ask for that extra time and questions in advance, sometimes depending on whether or not they've interviewed for that role before and are fully prepared for it, may mean how far in advance you can get the questions. If they're still writing up the questions a couple of days beforehand, because sometimes that does happen, then that can impact on how much in advance they could give you the questions. So it's about what is operationally possible for them to provide within the timescales that they're working with. But things like that are relatively small tweaks to the process, I would say, and can usually be accommodated without any concern. And I'm not sure how long I've been speaking actually and how quickly I've been talking. I think I covered the basics of access to work. There are a few charities, websites that have more information on the process, and there's some videos out there. So yeah, I think that's everything. I'll wrap that up then now.
Thank you very much for that. That's really, really useful overview. And as you said at the beginning, it's kind of the government's best kept secret in many ways. So I hope that that's been helpful for our students. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to my colleague Jenny, who's going to be giving you some info on support for graduates going forward, because obviously you will soon be graduates after not too many weeks and months. So Jenny will be giving you an overview of what support and resources are available for you.
Thanks. As Delia said there, I'm Jenny. I work in the careers service with Delia, and I look after finalists and recent graduates as well. So not many people know, but you can continue to use the careers service for 2 years after you finish your course. So basically everything you can access as a student, you can also access as a graduate. And this includes one-to-one careers guidance appointments, interview support, mock interviews or practice interviews, application feedback, and all the support and resources on our website as well. It also includes all of the events and the fairs that we run, and Career Connect, which is our vacancy and events database. how you signed up for this event today. So to find out more about the specific support you can access as a graduate, you can see our website there. Feel free to visit it. Something new for graduates is that you now have access to the Career Set online CV checker. So students can access this already, and it means that you can gain instant automatic feedback on your CV in real time, wherever you are in the world, whatever time. So graduates can access this now as well. All they have to do is log on to Career Connect to get their unique alumni access code. And then you can just go onto the website there and you put your name and your email in. Make sure it's the same email that you've used to register for Career Connect. Put in your alumni access code and you can start using it right away. You can use it in two ways. You can get feedback on just a general CV, or you can also get specific feedback on how well your CV is tailored to a specific job application. So if you're about to apply for a job and you want to find out how you can further tailor it to that specific list of essential skills that the employer requires, you can feed it through and you'll get really detailed feedback on how you can further improve it, so it more accurately reflects the essential skills that the employer is looking for. Just a little note, obviously as a student you can access all of our events, and as I said, as a graduate you can also. We are in the middle of organising Final Year Future Week, which is going to run the week after exams from the 14th to the 18th of June. And this week will be packed with lots of different sessions. There'll be alumni panels, employer events, there'll be careers workshops, and there'll also be an online careers fair on the Thursday. So it'll give you the chance to network, to find out more about specific industries that are hiring right now, such as tech and healthcare. There'll be information on areas such as creative industries in Manchester, and we'll also have lots of events about Manchester Graduate Talent, which is our it's a programme run by the University of Manchester that offers 2020 and 2021 graduates jobs across a variety of sectors in Greater Manchester. So lots of events that are coming up. We haven't opened for registration yet, and that will open mid-May, so make sure that you're following our social media channels, or you can continue to look on Career Connect to find out when those events will be on the calendar. You'll know it's a Final Year Future event because it will have Future Week just before the title. We will also have a specific event for students and graduates with a disability that will run midweek on the Wednesday, and it will be an early morning event from 9 to 10. All of the events will be recorded, so don't worry if you can't access it in real time. You will be able to access the recording, which will be on the Career Service YouTube channel, maybe about a week or so after the event. Just a little note to say that remember that you can book a careers guidance appointment now and for up to 2 years after you finish your course. You may have already booked one of these, or you may not have, so the instructions are on screen there. It's very easy to do. You can book a 30-minute appointment for graduates with myself. You can book a longer 60-minute appointment with Delia or our other colleague Vic. And you can use these appointments in whichever way you would like to discuss whatever careers related topics you would like to discuss, whether that's disclosure, job search strategies on how to find disability confident employers, or perhaps how to, if you're not sure what you want to do and you want to find out more about the options available to you and the types of work or sectors that your interests and motivations and strengths may align quite well with. So definitely do take the time to have a chat with us. They're all online, all virtually on Zoom, and we'd be more than happy to have a chat with you about anything careers related that you'd like to discuss. And the last little note before I hand back to Delia is just a note about the graduate outcomes survey. So 15 months after you graduate, which may feel like ages from now, but it'll come around quite quickly. You'll be contacted by an organisation called HESA, that's the Higher Education Statistics Agency, and they will ask you or invite you to fill out the Graduate Outcomes Survey. The survey you can take on phone, on the phone or email. It takes about 10 minutes, and it basically asks you what you're up to now as a graduate and what graduate success means to you. So is that using the skills that you gained during your degree? Is that full-time or part-time employment? Is that further study? Is that running your own business? Is it taking a year out, volunteering? And we use the results of the Graduate Outcomes Survey in lots of different ways. So the survey does have national significance, and it helps policymakers, the government, charities, researchers make decisions that affect the future of higher education. But we also use it on an institutional level to promote and improve our courses, and also to further tailor career support for students and graduates. So when you are contacted, please do take the time to fill it out.
Many thanks for that overview, Jenny. Hopefully that's been some really useful information. So thanks to Jenny, thanks to Emma and Keanu. Just to re-emphasise that you can use our support for 2 years after you graduate. And for graduates, particularly this year, and particularly if you have a health condition or disability, we do understand that it is an anxious time and a worrying time for many. It's daunting anyway, even in normal times. Please do be aware that we are very much mindful of that, and we are here to support you as you navigate the post-university world. Thanks for everybody for attending. I hope it's been helpful, and we wish you well, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Okay, thank you.